tissue that's tired doesn't move well. It looks more toned when it's at rest. So those are the things that I'm gonna look for first is to see, do I have a healthy athlete? Do I have a rested athlete? Do I have tissue that's ready to be elastic? Or do I have an athlete that's chronically overdosed with the wrong meds and needs actually 2 weeks of active recovery in the pool before we do anything related to gait and speed? So I can't say, Erica, that fatigue 100% changes gait, but when I did my graduate work in university, we did look at, we tracked DOMs in athletes, and they were basketball players, female basketball players, but we tracked their muscle soreness. And the athletes that reported the higher levels of soreness also reported to perceive the workloads as higher. So they felt like, it's like anytime our muscles are really tired and sore, whatever we go to do is going to feel worse than it actually is, right? We've all done that. We've gone up a set of stairs after we've done like a lot of sprinting, and the legs just feel like we need some help getting up there. So, we don't want kids to get used to that feeling, right? We want kids to feel like their body's ready to compete and ready to train. And there's times of the year when we can push and we can, but we do that with Olympic athletes. We do that prior to the World Championships. And we do that prior to the Olympic Games. Like when I used to work with Canadian wrestlers in the USA national girls, and I have 5 world medalists I've trained, I look at what we would do prior to a major event, and then afterwards, they'd be off the mats for a month, resting and recovering. And some of these kids were university age. They weren't, they weren't in their late 20s. They were 18, 19 years old. So, some sports do a great job of tapering and listening to the kids and tracking load and tracking wellness, and then other sports. And I'd say soccer for sure is in the dark ages of it. It's actually I just know this just based on, like, flipping conversations with people. They don't know. Mm.
That's fascinating with the muscle soreness and the gait, and I can definitely see that fatigue manifesting physically, and we're not getting the most out of a running mechanic session. But I wonder, is there also something to the mental side of it? Because mechanics is skill acquisition, and it's like, well, if a kid is constantly fatigued, how are they able to acquire new skills and pick up on new things in their sprinting form? Is there anything on that?
There is, way outside of my wheelhouse. I had a client that just sent me, a zipped file full of articles in that very area that I'll be tackling over the break. But there are people that study mental fatigue and its association with performance, much better than I do. I would probably safe bet to say that there's certainly a relationship between the 2. It's hard to just say, "Oh, that person is suffering from central nervous system fatigue," because it's hard to measure. It's not like we can go around and start measuring, like, the receptor sensitivity and acetylcholine and things like that, just, day to day, or start, like, doing MRIs on people. But I think with kids, generally what happens when they're really tired is they get irritable. That's, like, the first one is mood disorders. I was talking with, Laurie Primos, the head of track at the university here, and that's what he said. And he's been coaching track and has worked with the gentleman down at Altus for years, that, when kids are really stressed physically with high intensity work, and remember, high intensity is high forces. It's not the burn, right? Like people are like, "Oh, I had a high intensity workout. I did like 50,000 air squats." And then my answer is, "Oh, wow, there's no honor in that," right? Because there's no load. It's intense, but it's not. It just feels intense because it burns. And we really need to get the fitness scene out of sport. Okay. If people want to do 50,000 air squats and they don't play sports, that's totally fine. But the way that athletes are developed couldn't be more different.
Now, can you talk a little bit about gait versus load management, in the ACL rehab space?
Sure. Okay. So with ACL rehab, I use something called a gait component approach, which, to be fully transparent, is something I invented because when I went into the literature, Erica, I was a bit disappointed, is to say it politely, at what physical therapists were doing with respect to clearing someone to run. Okay. In other words, there is no criteria. One of the studies I read literally said if an athlete can leg press 1.5 times their body weight on one leg, they're ready to run. That's like, it's like telling a parent that has an infant that if they can use a spoon or use their hand, let's say, and feed themselves blueberries, they're ready to run. Like there's actually very little relationship between the two. So what I do in rehab and in my course is I teach clinicians and strength and conditioning coaches. I even had a soccer coach in my last cohort, which was awesome. Um, Start them in the pool with the athlete and get them to start walking in the pool, get them to start doing things like marching, analyze the sport. If the sport requires some lateral movement, jockeying type movements, galloping, all those movements can be done in water. So getting away from this idea that it's some type of milestone that we need to start jogging. Another thing we need to remember is that jogging, not running and sprinting, but jogging, the ground reaction force is about 2 to 3 times body weight. So again, going from exercises that have zero body, like only body weight, so 1 times body weight, to 2 to 3 times, there's just a big jump. So in between that, we get in the pool, we do all our exercises in there for about a month and a half, and then we get the athletes out of the pool, we get them on land, we start marching on land. Then we start doing track and field dribbles, which are kind of a hybrid drill between upright sprinting and plyometrics. And we build volume on dribbles because the displacement, which is the amount the body moves up and down, is very minimal in dribbling, which lessens the ground reaction forces and bridges the gap between walking and actually jogging. And then once athletes can handle pretty high volumes of dribbling, then they can start accelerating. I just skip the jogging stage altogether with athletes because athletes can jog. Like once they can sprint and accelerate, they can jog. Like we don't need to work on jogging. And I don't have time, right? I have however many months or time period to get kids back. I have a kid I'm working with now. She's 6 months post-op, and her coach is like, do you think she'll be ready in March, for playoffs kind of thing. So it's like, all right, maybe, I don't know, but we're working towards something and it's not jogging.